Excellent. Welcome everybody to this to this meeting of the Council of Governors of Lincolnshire Partnership NHS Foundation Trust. People that haven't met me, I'm Kevin Lockyer. I'm the Trust Chair. There are some new governors to welcome tonight, so I will say, or this afternoon. So I'll say welcome to them. More on that anon. Karen, have we got any apologies for absence that are worth mentioning?
I think we'll just record them in the minutes as usual, Kevin. There's a few.
Yeah. And I should also mention that it is our new medical director Girish and our new director of people. So I told you I might not get all my words out at all. Their first Council of Governors meeting too. So I'd like to welcome Amy and Girish. Bex.
Yeah, sorry, just going back to apologies. I'm hoping Karen's had them both, but Emma Slack was in touch with me earlier, and also Helen Smith giving apologies.
I'm grateful. Thank you, Bex. Are there any declarations of interest that are different to those that we've already got recorded or specific for this meeting? I don't see any. So we'll move on then to Karen. Sorry, you've got your hand up.
Kevin, I just wondered if you wanted to mention at this point in the meeting about your report at the end of the meeting regarding the net performance.
I was going to raise that under matters arising.
Okay.
But thank you. Where was I? Minutes of the last meeting, which is the 4th of August. Has anybody got any comments on those minutes, either points of accuracy or matters arising? I don't see any. Are colleagues happy for me to sign those then as an accurate record of the last meeting? If you could indicate in chat, that would be helpful. Fab, thank you very much. As Karen has just reminded me, for the last meeting, the last item on the agenda, which is 4.4, non-executive director performance, I will, before we start that item, ask my non-exec colleagues to absent themselves and go tractor watching or whatever else they might do to entertain themselves in their spare time so that we can talk about them while they're not here. Insofar as governors might want to reflect at all on that paper. Let's move on then to 1.5, which is the schedule of actions. Anybody got any comments on those, Bex?
Yeah, sorry, Kevin. You moved a bit fast for me. The minutes.
Apologies.
No, it's all right. Ignore me. It's the Repcom minutes that I need to talk about. Doesn't matter. Ignore me.
No problem. Any comments on the schedule of actions? If not, I'll take those as noted. As usual, there is a link on the website to the minutes of the last public board of directors meetings. That is those on the 29th of September and the 28th of July. I'd be very happy to take any questions that governors may have on those minutes. If not, I'll take those as noted as well. And I'll move on, if I may, then to comments from the chair. I don't want to steal Sarah's thunder, the chief executive's thunder, later, because as usual, Sarah's offered us a comprehensive and helpful kind of state of the nation paper. But I thought it might be helpful if I said a few things kind of on behalf of my non-executive colleagues as much as anything else, rather than the board as a whole. And I want to say 4 things. The first, and none of these will be of particular surprise, but I just want to add a bit of perspective from where I sit as chair. So the first is the obvious point that we continue to deliver services in a really challenging environment. It's really challenging because COVID's still around, as the Chief Executive's report notes, and it continues to be challenging because, to move into my second point, we continue to have significant workforce challenges. Sorry, it's a bit tautologous to say it's a challenge because we've got challenges, but I haven't scripted these comments. So, we do have significant workforce challenges. We've never ducked that. What we try to do as a board, particularly as non-executives, is to assure ourselves that the executive team are doing everything that they reasonably can and have a coherent strategy for meeting our medium to long-term workforce requirements. What I will say is that getting to the place that we want to be is not an easy journey. And it's very easy to fall into the trap of saying that the exec team aren't doing enough, or that they're doing the wrong things, or they don't have a clear path from where we are now to where we all want to be. My sense is that couldn't be further from the truth. We have a coherent strategy. We've got an awful lot of resource, time and effort going into addressing the workforce issues that we have. But it is a very, very difficult environment. We can't, this is a flippant comment, so forgive me, but qualified and experienced staff don't grow on trees. And we have to work really hard, not just to recruit as other trusts do, but to attract, recruit and retain people in Lincolnshire. And that's difficult. It is more difficult to attract, recruit and retain people in Lincolnshire than it is some other parts of the country. So we've got a double challenge, one around the shortage of suitably qualified professional workforce in the first place, and then attracting them to Lincolnshire. That isn't a counsel of despair by any means, because the progress that the trust has made has been, I think, really commendable in the last year, but we are running up a very steep hill. But I'm confident that the exec team are running as hard as they can. The third thing I want to just reflect on quickly, and it's linked to workforce and it's linked to the final point I'll make in a minute. I don't want to turn this into a soapbox, but I think these are important points that I need to make. The third point is, I was going to say, so many people in the virtual room would have seen the documentary on Panorama a few weeks ago, showing some absolutely shocking behaviour by staff in a mental health trust. Governors won't be surprised to know that the issues exposed by that documentary and a second one in, I think, on Dispatches on Channel 4, that the issues raised by that have exercised the board, really fundamentally over the last few weeks. We've spent a lot of time both in board meetings and separately trying to get to a place where we can assure ourselves that there isn't a risk of similar behaviour happening in Lincolnshire. For me, this is an absolutely kind of defining issue. I would be both appalled and deeply upset if I found that we had staff that were behaving anything remotely like that, and I have no evidence to suggest, I hasten to add, that we do. But governors, I think, need to be aware just how much effort we are putting in, both as non-execs and the exec team and other leaders in the organisation, to assure ourselves that we can't go down that path, as it were, ourselves. And it speaks to a whole range of issues: leadership throughout the organisation, culture, and a whole raft of other stuff, which we might touch on later, we might not. But the important thing is that has loomed really large on our collective agenda over the last few weeks, and as I hope you would expect, but it is absolutely a defining issue for the leadership of the trust at the moment. And those two, and my final point is this, that those two issues around workforce and the patient safety and, you know, kind of care stuff that was exposed by the Panorama documentary come together around the decision to close the psychiatric intensive care unit or temporarily to close it. And governors need to be aware that personally, I've been really exercised by that decision, and it's a decision that I know that executive colleagues have put an awful lot of effort into, and which the board has exercised considerable scrutiny. And I think the chief executive will confirm that, you know, personally as chair, I've, you know, subjected her to, you know, significant scrutiny around it too. It's a really, really difficult decision to take, but it illustrates the fact that I think as a trust we've got a really difficult set of competing priorities to manage. And I say this to not necessarily to governors, but to the world at large, who think that you know, running a mental health trust is easy, and that dealing with the issues around workforce is easy, and if only we gave it sufficient effort and put our shoulders behind the wheel a bit more, everything would come right. You know, the decision around PQ illustrates for me the fact, as I say, we've got some competing tensions. We've got an absolute duty of care to our staff to keep them safe. We've got what I would describe as a really deep moral duty to the public to provide the best services that we can for the population that need them. And we've got, if you like, a public duty to those who are paying us to do our best to deliver those services to our patients and to others, and sometimes finding a way through those duties, all of which can pull us in slightly different directions, is a really difficult, really sensitive and really nuanced job. And so I say to anybody actually that thinks that Sarah and her team have got an easy solution to all of this, that if they only worked a bit harder or pulled the right rabbit out of the hat, everything would come good. It really, really isn't like that. And I'm not suggesting for a moment that anybody on this meeting thinks that it is, but it's really important to me sometimes just to say publicly how difficult a job it is to balance along those particular tightropes. I've probably ranted for long enough. Thank you very much for listening to that. But I think they're really important comments, if I may say so, that help to frame some of the things that we might talk about over the next couple of hours. So thank you for listening. And I can see, Mark, that you've been waiting patiently listening to me have a slight rant. So we'll move on, if we may. Then I'm happy to take questions on any of that if colleagues have any. If I have battered you into submission, then I apologise. We'll move on to item 1.8, which is the external audit report. Mark, thank you for waiting patiently and putting up with me rant.
It's not a problem at all.
Over to you.
Thank you for inviting me. There's a presentation pack in the presentation in your, and it's there to introduce Mazars and myself and my team as your new external auditor for 22-23. And I am genuinely grateful to have this opportunity to introduce ourselves, because as the Council of Governors, you have an important role. And what I want to set out, and the intent today, is to try and humanise the fact that, yes, we have a very technical role and we use unbelievable amounts of jargon in this, but I'm going to lay out for you who we are and the cover of the work that we do, so that hopefully in September of next year, I'll come back and tell you everything that we've done and the outcome of that work, and it will hopefully feel not quite so impenetrable and slightly more understandable for you. So with the presentation, there's a slide in here, and it's got a picture of myself and a chap called Mike Norman. Ultimately, I am responsible for the overall delivery of the service and for issuing the opinions that we reach. I'm supported by Mike. Mike lives in Lincoln and has I won't say how many years, but he has a number of years of experience of delivering this work. And Mike and I are supported by a dedicated team of people who are specialists in delivering NHS external audit work. And that's there to give you the assurance that we're deploying the right kind of people that understand how to do this work and deliver it on time for you. On the subsequent page, there's a little bit about us as Mazars, because some of you may not have come across us before. The key points for me is that Mazars itself is a large global firm, and we're experts in public sector audit. We have around about 50 NHS organisations as external auditors, and about another 100 local authorities that we work with. So that public sector is really core to what we do. I personally work with the other provider trusts across Lincolnshire. And I'm also the external auditor of the county council, and that's quite helpful in just giving that macro understanding of the kind of challenges and the economy and the demographics around Lincolnshire, so that when we're having conversations with your teams, we understand how the numbers reflect where and how you work. Now, the scope of our work. This is where it gets a little bit technical, but the scope of our work is defined by the law. Now, the law says that I'm required to issue you with 3 opinions, 3 pieces of work. I give you an opinion on the financial statements. Now, for those of you that are familiar with the corporate world, it's essentially the same thing. It's an opinion on the income and the expenditure and what the trust owns and what it owes at the financial year end. We adopt a risk-based approach that is governed by what's called international standards on auditing. And what that means is that drives through consistency and ensures that there are standards of quality of the work that we're required to deliver on that. I'm also required to issue something called a commentary on your value for money arrangements. Now, this is the one that personally I feel can be really confusing and difficult, because you might think that we issue an opinion on whether the trust delivers value for money. I'm afraid we don't. That's just the name of what it's called. What we do is we look at kind of controls, procedures, and the mechanisms that the trust has in place across 3 areas. We look at something called financial resilience and sustainability, which is essentially looking at your budgets, how they are set, how they are controlled, and what kind of assumptions go into the financial planning, and whether we think those are reasonable or not. We look at an area called governance, which is fundamentally, we look at how risks are managed. We look at the formation of the risk register, how it's reviewed and whether it's thoroughly reviewed as part of the process. And we also look at essentially performance management arrangements. So how information is collated on managing performance against key indicators, your mental health standards, that the board looks at those and then it takes action on those. And what that does is that comes back in something called a commentary, and we will play that back to you as a Council of Governors of whether we feel those are, and I apologise for this, adequate or not. You won't ever hear me issuing superlatives, I'm afraid. We just look at a benchmark of adequate. Otherwise, I'll get into trouble with my risk management and legal people. But its intent is to give broad levels of assurance to you as a Council of Governors over all of those areas. The third area of my responsibility is the one that hopefully you will never see, and that's a unique feature of the audit in the NHS, and it involves the use of statutory powers. So if I believed the trust was taking action that was unlawful, I can draw on these powers to draw them to your attention with things called public interest reports or statutory recommendations. Those are the never ever kind of incidents that you want to experience, but the reason why we flag them up is just to give you that context of where it's at and the assurance of that we have what broad ranging powers there. Now on a granular level, the way we operate is our primary interaction with the trust is going to be via the audit committee, and the non-executives on the audit committee will be seeing the detail, our plan of work, the work that we're performing, our progress reports, and the very detailed outcomes of those reports. And you, as a Council of Governors, are getting your assurance around the operation of the trust through those non-executives and how they're performing. And we do that rather than bringing all the reports yourself, because as the audit committee will come to realise, our reports get quite long, and it's not because there's lots to say, but highly technical information that needs to go in there, and we will distill that and summarise that for you as the Council of Governors. We do have the ability to report to the board directly, if should we so wish. In a normal functioning, it's appropriate that everything runs through the audit committee, but if we felt we had to, we could go to the board to shortcut arrangements for that. And then lastly, we have a coming back to you as a Council of Governors. And as I said, in about 12 months' time, what we'll do is, having run through all the process of delivering our reports and implementing our work through the audit committee, we will come back to you as a Council of Governors so you have line of sight over the work that has happened and the outcome of that work. Now, should there be a reason to escalate to yourselves earlier than that, then we would do. I sincerely hope that we don't need to do that one, but as I have to maintain my independence, and if I felt it was necessary to come to you, I would do. The message I normally give is this: the less you see of me, the better things are, and that's the kind of environment that you want to be in, and that's not to be anything about the relationship we have with the trust. It's just my time is better spent with those that are going wrong, and that gives you the assurance that things are going right with yourselves. There is another page in the presentation that I'm not going to go through. It just gives you a little bit of backup around everything that I've just said about the scope of our work and across the financial statements in a tiny little bit more detail. So I will pause at that point. Today's more about an introduction, but as always, I am always happy to take any questions through this or via, if you ever wanted to submit something that came through, alternative that you just didn't feel comfortable about asking in a meeting forum like this, I'm more than happy to receive those and feed those back to people on a one-to-one basis or group basis.
Thank you, Mark. That's a really helpful introduction to you and to Mazars. I really appreciate that. Thank you. I'm looking around to see if anybody's got any questions for you. And I can't see anything. I'm going to ask the Director of Finance, Mark, is there anything that you want to add to that introduction?
Thanks, Chair. No, I think it was a good detailed introduction. I think the teams are already working well together in terms of sharing information and getting ready for the year end. So no, we're looking forward to working with Mark and the team and Mike. So,
excellent. Thank you,
Chair.
Mark. So Mark, thank you very much. And thanks for giving up your time to come and talk to the Council of Governors. Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks. I think we can release you now and you can go and find hopefully other things to do. And we'll move on then to item 2.1, which is the minutes of the Representation Committee. Debbie.
Yes, thank you. I would normally sort of want to highlight quite a few things in these minutes to you. what I'd like to say is, if you hadn't had the opportunity to hear Carol Hagan's experience as a governor, it's really worth sort of reading that or talking to Carol. And perhaps I could put in a plug to say, if there's anybody that would like to share their experience at the next representation committee, it is always good to learn from how things are going for you. The rest of it is for your information to read. Happy to try and answer any questions, and just check with you that they're a correct record as well. Thank you.
Thanks, Debbie. Bex.
Yeah, this was just a correction that from the number was RC brackets 22. I'm trying to read my own handwriting. Can't read my own handwriting, but basically it was a paragraph about Development Day, which was organised for March 22, and due to low uptake of the Development Day, it was postponed, with the Development Day to take place in July 22. Nothing happened, but there's an inaccuracy there. It was March rather than July.
Yeah, I've spotted it, Bex. It's on page 6, about 3 paragraphs down.
Thank you. As I
that's
say,
right.
my handwriting and my eyes aren't working well together today.
Mine next. Thank you. All spotted. Is there anything else on those, please?
Carol.
Could I just say that I thought the training day that did happen in July was an excellent day, and the timing went like clockwork, and the lunch was great, and the welcome was great, and it was good to meet new governors and governors who've been governor, for some time, and also some of the officers. So I thought it was a very good day.
So I think we'd probably need to invite people, Debbie, to agree that you can sign those minutes as a true record, subject to Bex's amendment.
Yes, thank you.
Karen.
Just a point of accuracy, Kevin, it's actually not for the council to sign the approve the minutes today. They'll be approved in the next representation committee.
Of course,
meeting.
you're right. Sorry. Yeah, sorry. You are absolutely correct. Sorry, Karen. My apologies. I did warn you that I might not be quite my normal sparkling self today, so I was wrong on that one. Apologies. Let's move on then to
Advantage of a team approach, Kevin.
Hey, sorry.
It's the advantage of a team approach together.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's move on then, shall we, Debbie, to 2.2, which is also yours, and conscious that we've got a substantive discussion, if we want one, around the NED performance at the end of the agenda.
Okay, so I'll just present this for information now, and would discuss it later at the end of the agenda then, if need be.
Thanks, Debbie. Any questions at this stage for Debbie? I don't think there are. So shall we move on then to 2.3 and the Governor's activity report?
Thank you, Kevin. I'll keep it brief, as the information on the report is just for information above all. But effectively, the activities outlined are from July to November. So we had a range of activities, as always, including the Governor Development Day that's already been referenced. We're hoping to integrate more in-person sessions in, and at the bottom of this document, we have the upcoming activities as well. So we've also released today that governors have been invited to the conversations about adult mental health wards, which isn't in the papers due to timeframes. And we're also, based on governor feedback, hoping to implement a site visit to the Peter Hodgkinson Centre following the board visit, and a lot of positive feedback surrounding that. But if anyone has any questions, I can answer.
Thanks, Shanna. Can't see any questions. Do you want to move on then to the iLog?
Sure. Perfect. So again, the document is for information more than anything. So between July and November, we had 4 iLogs that were worked on. We had 3 new submissions and 1 that was reopened, just so that we can assist with the progress of that one. That is in relation to the Stagecoach scheme, and we have had some progress since we reopened that too. Within the 3 submissions that were put in this quarter, we had 1 relating to a protocol in A&E with matters relating to mental health service users. So over the weekends to implement phone calls just as a checkup, which was positively received. That will be reviewed once staffing resources within the relevant areas were improved. So effectively, the head of urgent care said that he would keep that on the radar and he would keep us updated with any developments with that. We're also reviewing some informal sessions where governors could get more involved and hear more about national and local initiatives. We're working on that, and we're also going to have a discussion at next couple of weeks at COGREP. And we are also looking into reintroducing a staff governor support network, which will be led by the lead governor. So we hope that that will be an informal space in which staff governors can share best practice and also see where we can support with collective feedback as well.
Thanks, Jana. Any questions or comments on the iLog? Can't see any. Thank you very much. Shall we move on then to the Chief Executive's report? Sarah.
Thank you, Kevin. For anybody who doesn't know me, I'm Sarah Connery. I'm Chief Executive here at the Trust, and like Kevin, I've also had the lurgy, so apologies, I'm a little bit hoarse, so I may have to just keep taking drinks to get me through the report, which I will assume is read, but there are a few key items that I want to pull out for people's attention. You can see there is a lot going on. So thank you, Kevin, for your remarks at the top of the meeting in terms of particularly the operational pressures that we face at the minute. So first off, in terms of COVID, we have had quite a significant number of outbreaks across the Trust. And you'll be aware from your normal daily lives that things are back to business as usual for all intents and purposes out there in society. The guidance on the back of the increasing infection rates for COVID haven't changed. So we do just continue to try and be vigilant, push staff to make sure that they're following really good infection prevention and control habits in hand washing, social distancing where possible, and mask wearing within clinical areas. So we continue to try and learn lessons from any outbreaks. We're really pushing hard in terms of people getting vaccinations, getting their autumn boosters, and obviously a key risk at this time of the year is flu as well. So really pushing staff to have their flu vaccination. So we've just started on the usual competitive league tabling that we go on each year across the NHS. So we're sort of number 6 out of all the mental health trusts in terms of flu vaccinations, but we'll continue to make sure that staff can easily access those vaccinations. Bex, you want to come in now?
It was just a comment with regard to vaccination. A number of people have been saying they've been having both the vaccinations at one time, and from what I'm hearing in society, there's a great deal of people having adverse reactions to that within. So I'm just wondering whether we need to perhaps be advising staff with regard to maybe separating those out so that we're not having staff off sick because they are unwell because they've had 2 jabs at the same time.
Yes, that's a really good point. And obviously each individual is different in terms of their reaction, but we're not actually offering the COVID jabs ourselves within the Trust. So every time that we're given a flu vaccination internally, it's a standalone injection, if you see what I mean, without COVID. I know some people who've had positive reaction and felt fine, and others who, you know, weren't able to lift their arms the next morning. So yeah, I think it's each individual case, but it's certainly not that when we're providing those vaccinations, it's you've got to have both at the same time. So yeah, an interesting point, definitely a valid point to make. And on the back of that, in terms of winter resilience, included in the report, we are working as a system around our winter resilience. We've got a paper coming to our sustainability committee where our non-executives will be able to pressure test our organisational plans, as well as our system plans for resilience. We're doing lots of planning together, many submissions, and from the 1st of December we will have a system-wide sort of single call centre, a bit like a sort of flight deck where you've got oversight of everything that's happening across the urgent and emergency care system in services within the system. Linked to this, I don't know whether people are aware, but there have been discussions, you're probably aware, around industrial action, and the RCN, the Royal College of Nursing ballots came back yesterday. No Lincolnshire Trust has passed the test, so to speak, to strike. This is the RCN union. There are, of course, other unions. We have staff who are part of Unison, for example. We need to keep an eye on BMA activity as well. But EMAS, however, have voted to strike. So we're just working through that as a system in terms of what that means. And we're doing a exercise next week as a system in terms of emergency preparedness for not having enough staff to be able to run services. But that is quite hot off the press, so I didn't want to go without pointing that out to people. In terms of the Workforce Summit, and as Kevin said, workforce is the reddest risk on our risk register, as I always say in my reports here. I'm delighted that we've now got a director on our board, Amy Beaton, joining us tonight with dedicated capacity and capability to address those people risks. The Workforce Summit, it was a really great opportunity to talk. We've got lots of ideas, but what's the barriers to us moving forward with some of those innovations? So it was a really good, honest conversation about one of our values in LPFT is innovation, but do we really put our money where our mouth is in terms of being able to move forward around some of the new roles, in terms of moving money around, offering flexibility to staff, in terms of the opportunities that we provide. So there's a number of work action plans that are coming out of that, which will be picked up through the people committee and then on through to the board. In terms of cost of living, there's some we've taken some more action there around what we can do as a trust without giving people tax bills, and working within the pay frameworks that we have to support with cost of living challenges. And latterly, we've sort of increased the mileage rate, which I know a lot of our community staff do sort of say that they're struggling to be able to afford to fill up their tank. So we're ordering more pool cars, for example, for our crisis staff. But every little helps really to help people address those challenges. There is some additional information in there around the trust response to the Panorama programme, as Kevin talked about previously. We've had a report to our board last week around some of the governance around that, some of the actions that we're taking, and we're trying to work with our colleagues across the East Midlands Alliance as well as the region and nationally as well in terms of lessons learned. And nationally, there's a quality improvement programme that's just started around inpatient wards across the mental health estate. In terms of the leadership, some of the areas that Kevin was talking about, culture, workforce staffing, digital solutions, ensuring that not only are our patients safe, but also our staff as well. So more to come on that in future reports. And finally, just want to talk about the PQ, the Psychiatric Intensive Care Unit, and the temporary closure. It has been a really difficult decision, and we're sort of reviewing in terms of lessons learned. If we could have sort of preempted what's happened in terms of our workforce pipeline. But next steps, we want to work really closely with staff, stakeholders, service users and carers, and of course yourself, as Shad has pointed out earlier, in terms of what do we have to have in place before we can safely open again. Because it does absolutely remain our ambition to provide psychiatric intensive care support for males and females in the county going forward. But we've got to be able to do it safely and offer a quality service. So I'll stop there, but my voice gives up. And I'm happy to take any comments or questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sarah. I've got Bex first.
Yeah, it was just a question with regard to the stats at the bottom of the page for membership, and was asking, is there any way of putting information within there that gives us an indication of increase in membership or decrease in membership, and whether it could be drilled down to sort of show where we're decreasing or increasing in our membership?
That is an excellent point. We do love a good statistical process control chart in the trust, but we haven't really applied it, have we, to our membership figures? So yeah, we'll pick that up as an action, Bex, in terms of what's happening over a period of time rather than just a snapshot. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a helpful
Thank you.
suggestion. Bex, a nice time series is always good. Carol.
I just wanted to make the comment that you know, I read with interest, and having listened to yourself and Sarah, that you are required to submit a winter plan, you know, how you will manage services due to things like COVID and staff absences due to COVID. It seems to me, and as a public governor, as a member of the public, I just wanted to comment that, you know, it seems a one-way system, really. That what a shame that the NHS does not give the system support, and that the COVID statistics seem to be kept fairly secret now and hidden from the public. And it's my understanding that many people are being hospitalized with COVID. They might not be dying, but they're being hospitalized, putting such a pressure on beds and resources and staff. And you wonder, you know, where is going to be the ending if there are no mitigations? How can we not have this incredible pressure on the NHS because of COVID? And it's good to hear that there are local plans, and that, you know, there is the wearing of masks in clinical settings in Lincolnshire, but it remains, you know, a huge pressure. And I just wanted to really make that comment, and that as a governor, I wish that, you know, the trust and NHS hospitals had more support from central government. It's just what I wanted to say.
Shall I come back in on that one, and if that's okay, and others might want to comment? So it's a really good point. We do still stay in a level 3. We were in level 4 in sort of incident response mode, so we're kind of on that high alert mode at the minute as an NHS, as a National Health Service. At the minute, it's really hard to get good quality data about the infection rates because we're not doing that routine testing anymore. So we do sort of ask not even our own staff, not to do the routine testing unless they're symptomatic, so to speak. But we can still access those tests. But for the general population, it's only actually when people are coming into hospital that they are getting tested. And of course, at that stage, it might be too late. So there has been additional funding. We've got £127,000 in Lincolnshire for mental health winter resilience across the whole NHS. There's another 500 million that's coming out. We don't quite know when and what that might look like for Lincolnshire. But we're at that point where the money's great, but we can't actually recruit the staff. And we can't generate beds out of nothing, out of you know, the estate that we've got. And needless to say, some of that is quite poor in some hospital sites across the country. So we just need to get a really good set of scenario plans for our winter planning in terms of, you know, where this could be. But as I sit here at the minute, I'm more concerned about illness from seasonal flu and other respiratory than COVID. It's just when you add it all up together, it could possibly get quite bleak. But I think the system is really well connected in as good a place it can be, really, in terms of responding to whatever's coming around the corner. I don't know whether that's helpful, Carol, but
No, it's good. As I say, it's good to hear there are such good, plans in place, but it does seem to me a bit of a one-way street that, if the public are not made aware of the current situation and the number of infections, etc., then the public take more risks. The more people are going to get poorly, the more they will come to hospital having COVID. And of course, there's always asymptomatic COVID as well. That's still out there, and it just seems to me an unrelenting pressure that with a bit more support and a bit more transparency over the data, we might have a healthier country. And it's just, as a governor, I just wanted to say that I just think it's an incredible pressure on the trust and hospitals.
thank you.
Thanks, Carol. I've got a comment in chat from Zachary, which I think I will refer to Amy as Director of People to pick that up and have a look at the issues that are raised there. Amy Beaton, if you don't mind. Are there
Kevin, I was just responding to it in the
yeah,
chat.
thanks, Amy. Are there any other questions or comments for Sarah? If not, then we will move on to the performance assurance report, which is item 3.2, which I'm going to ask Sharon to introduce. Sharon, if you would.
Thank you, Chair. So, thank you. So here we have for Council of Governors, the performance report. For those of you who are new to the Council, just to note that the Council of Governors collectively is the body that binds together the trust to its patients and service users and its staff and stakeholders. And in the Health and Social Care Act in 2012, governors were specifically tasked with holding the non-executive directors individually and collectively to account for the performance of the board of directors. So the performance report is here to enable you to achieve that. The board of directors has in place a board assurance framework, and the board assurance framework identifies the key risks to the trust meeting its strategic priorities. Each of these risks is delegated to the committees of the board for scrutiny and to gain assurance that the risks are being addressed and mitigated. So the report identifies the NED chair for each of those committees responsible for lead areas, and a narrative from the chair of that committee on assurances received against each area of risk to the delivery of trust priorities. So I'm going to take the paper as read and open it out to questions.
Thanks, Sharon. Are there any questions for Sharon, for any of the committee chairs, or for me on any of the content of the performance assurance report, which, as Sharon says, is designed to speak for itself and designed to give you as governors assurance that we as non-execs are properly holding the trust to account for performance and seeking assurance around key risks. I don't see any questions. I think with a single bound, you're free, Sharon.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's move on then to item 3.3, which is the annual report of the Quality Committee. Di.
Thanks, Kevin. So I'm Di Bailey, one of the non-exec directors. And just to help governors, because I know when I saw this report for the first time as a governor in a previous iteration, I think it's worth explaining that this report relates to the activity and report of the Quality Committee work. the governors will see in other parts of the year reports that relate to the quality strategy and the quality priorities. But for the purposes of this report, it's about what the committee has really been doing. So hopefully that helps explain it a little bit in terms of what is before you. I think hopefully it is fairly self-explanatory in terms of what we have been concerning ourselves with, as Sharon explained previously in terms of the performance report. We aim to get assurance about a number of risks that are on the board assurance framework that relate directly to quality. And we do that through the committees that report into quality. And as chair of quality, what I've also been doing is attending some of those committees to be able to see how we get some of that read across as well. So one of the things that you will see in the report is that because of where we were in terms of the COVID situation and coming out of that, the committee hadn't had any deep dives. We've since had a quality committee in October when those deep dives have restarted. So already some of what you are seeing in the report in terms of alluding to going forward is happening. So I'll stop there and then happy to take any questions, Kevin.
Thanks, Di. Are there any questions for Di? I don't see any. Thank you very much.
Hang on, Kevin. I do have a question. Sorry.
I can't see who that is. If
It's Claire Matthews.
Okay. Can't see you on screen. Can I ask if people do want to ask questions, if they can use the hands raised facility, then I'm much less likely to miss you. But sorry, go on ahead with your question.
There we are, Kevin. I've got my hand up.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
And you can now see.
And now I can see you as well. Even better. Go on.
I noted in Sarah's report that she was troubled by the BBC Panorama report. And I can't find anywhere in all of the papers that are coming today if there are any issues concerning our own situation where there might be court cases or things going on. And I figured that the quality report was the best place to ask about it. So I just wonder if we are involved in any court cases in any of our establishments or institutions where individuals feel they're not being well treated or not getting the correct service, and if they're isolated or if they're consistent. Is there one in a year? Is there 10? Is there none? I'd be very grateful to learn that, please.
Okay, that's a very good question. And Di, I don't know whether you're best placed to answer that, or whether or not I ought to ask Sarah to answer it. But
I mean, I can give a general answer, Kevin, in terms of what we see at Quality Committee.
Let's start there then, and if Sarah wants to add anything.
Okay, so any complaints that we get through the trust, any serious incidents that that are being investigated at trust level, all of that information comes through to Quality Committee, and we have oversight of those. Sometimes because there is police involvement and for things like coroner's inquest and things like that, there can be quite a protracted period between, if you like, something coming onto the committee's radar and us actually seeing the end result of that investigation or whatever has been going on. And sometimes the trust investigation has to pause because there is investigation, you know, through the police. But in the main, those are quite limited incidents and very small in number. But that would be the sort of information that Quality Committee would be seeing. What we try to look for there is anything that stands out in terms of thematic that might cause us concern more generally. And if there was anything there, we would go back through the we would go back to exec colleagues if we needed to seek any further assurance. So I hope that gives a more sort of general perception of what we see at Quality Committee. But Sarah, happy for you to elaborate in terms of the detail.
Yeah, thank you, Di. Just to add, really, I think there's a fundamental question, isn't there, in terms of how do we know whether such behaviours are happening in our own organisation and our own services, and there is a myriad of information that we can triangulate. So we do 15 steps quality visits where the quality and safety team go into the service and literally go through 15 steps. They speak to service users, carers and families. You know, we have an advocacy service, and we're looking at potentially sort of bolstering some of that accessibility and capacity as well. So it's sort of independent support for service users when they're going through their recovery journey. In terms of the, as Di mentioned, in terms of the thematic review that we do of any serious incidents, complaints, ALS issues that get raised as well. We have a mortality review where we sort of pick up themes and trends as well. So there's all that triangulation that goes on, and the key theme, I suppose, that comes through, which has been an issue that's been seen through previous inquests, is around listening to families and listening to carers, where the view of the family isn't quite in line with the view of the professional, and what do we do around that? And that's the culture of listening, listening and hearing, and all of the work that we've done around our carer strategy and our carers council, that, you know, I personally try and attend as much as I can to help actually hear the views of carers and families, to triangulate it with everything else. So sorry, I'm waffling on a little bit, but there's so much information, and fundamentally it's about the culture and the leadership in each of those service areas. So we are investing more in terms of our organisational development support that we put in for ward managers, for example. So yeah, there's a lot going on, but fundamentally that's the question: how do you know? I'll stop there. Others might want to come in.
Is that a helpful response?
I don't think it is.
Okay.
In as much as I perhaps haven't been quite specific enough in my question, but I don't wish to. I am aware that there is a court case going on at the moment, and it affects my constituency in the sense I'm a governor representative for the county council. And I just want to be sure that they're being tracked and managed and being dealt with objectively through the Quality Commission. I don't want to deal with individual cases. I just want to be sure that we're all.
Yes. So let me answer that.
Are you clear about where I am?
I'm very clear.
And
so
can I be specific? The reason that I'm asking this question is that I have been told can't be discussed. It's a court case. It's going on. We're doing this, that, and the other. But actually, if it were to get into the public domain and be misrepresented, it would do us harm, I think, and that's what I'm concerned about.
So let me answer that question from a board perspective then, without this isn't about a specific court case. So the way the governance process works is, as part of the quality assurance that eventually gets its way to board, we will see all of the incidents that result in court proceedings of some kind or another. So they might be coroner's inquests, they may be other things. So the straightforward answer to your question is yes, they are tracked, and yes, both the Quality Committee and board is aware of those cases. Jenna, our Director of Corporate Governance, has got her hand up, and I don't know, Jenna, whether you wanted to add some additional observations on this point, because I saw you come in quite quickly.
Kevin, can I
It was
just
only
say
to follow up, Kevin, on everything you said. So in addition, in terms of the objectivity, in addition to Quality Committee and the board having oversight, our audit committee also has oversight of all legal cases within the organisation, just to provide that extra assurance on themes and trends, but also looking at the processes by which we handle legal cases within the organisation.
Thanks, Jenna.
Yeah, and thank you for that. And I'm truly not trying to be awkward or to embarrass anybody. And it may well be that this matter should have been dealt with, you know, outside of the governors' meeting. But there seems to be a block of silence. You know, it's in court. No one can be discussed. But it could, you know, any one court case could blow up in our face, and that wouldn't be a good thing. But it may well be that somebody wants to contact me out of this meeting.
Yeah, I think that sounds like a very sensible idea. And Jenna, if you don't mind picking up that job card in the first instance, otherwise we're having a conversation that is so Delphic that no one can quite follow it. But you know, you've had a response to the general question.
I'm very pleased with the principal's response, which I think it was a valid question to ask. But
absolutely so.
In that, it hasn't thrown any light on the bit I'm really concerned about. Thank you very much indeed.
Which sounds like something that needs to be discussed in private, as it were, and I'll make sure Jenna gets in touch with you on that. Thanks. And Councillor Kendrick, thank you for being very patient.
Thanks very much. I'm very much the new boy here, of course. So it's mine sort of questions similar on the lines of Colin Matthews. I was just wondering, looking at that report, there's obviously sort of general headings, but do we get, and you know, forgive my ignorance on this, but do we get stats on this, such as in comparative data, for example, about the level of complaints 1 year against another and the numbers of complaints? Lots of nodding heads I can see. So I was just wondering when those come through for us to have a look at and consider. I know it's a difficult thing regarding complaints in mental health issues, having had some contact with that sort of thing years past. So I was just wondering that we do get data, because obviously there's an awful lot summarised in that report, but there's not a lot of data to drill down into. But judging by the nodding heads, no doubt we'll get loads of information coming through at some point. I just wanted a clarification on that. Thanks, Chair.
So
thank you. Go on, Di. Sorry.
So thanks for that, Councillor Kendrick. That was what I was trying to explain at the beginning, and apologies if I didn't quite make it clear enough. So this is the report of, if you like, what the committee sees and what we've done. The detail that you're referring to will come through in the quality report, which gives some of that more granular information about, you know, the sort of the detail of the work and the kind of issues that you're referring to.
Thanks for that. It's being the novice here, I think, is the case.
I felt exactly the same way when I was a governor myself, in terms of the reason that this report is here is because of the trust status as a foundation trust. We have to, for governance purposes, report on the activity of the committee. The other report will be about
report. Rather than a data report. Right. Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thanks, Di. I don't see any further hands up, so I'm going to move on then, if I may, to item 3.4, which I'm going to ask Mark Platts to speak to. Mark.
Excellent. Thanks, Chair. So good evening, everyone. So I'm Mark Platts. I'm the Director of Finance and Information, and I presented a really important update for us, really, around how we're able to maintain our estate and make sure that we can provide the best services to our patients as we can. So I'll take the report as read, but I'm just going to pick up on a couple of key highlights, really. Ultimately, the big driver for this business case is to eradicate all of our dormitory wards, of which we currently have 3 remaining across our acute services, 2 on the Lincoln County Hospital site and 1 over in Boston. In terms of the Lincoln site, we mentioned it earlier on, building work is progressing well. So the 2 wards that are going to be known as Ellis and Castle will be replacing our current Charlesworth and Connolly wards, and they're due to be opening to patients in April next year. So our exec team were down there on Tuesday, had a really good walk round, and as we mentioned earlier on, we're going to broaden that out to board and governors as we get through the building and it becomes a safer environment. So everyone's more than willing to go down and see. It's really, really impressive. In fact, to be honest, you get a bit of a lump in your throat walking around, because all the hard work around the business case to make it real, to walk around and see the benefits that are really going to come from this is absolutely brilliant. And another positive update, which the paper kind of focuses on, is around our options around Boston. So obviously, governors will be aware we've had quite a difficult journey around securing funding to make sure that we can deliver the scheme over in Boston. And I'm pleased to say that the Trust's outline business case has now been approved by NHS England and the Department of Health and Social Care. And we've been allocated approximately £34 million to complete the scheme, which is going to give us a brand new 19-bedded ward on the Norton Lee site in Boston. So for those that are familiar with the area, it's literally only 3 miles away from the current site on the Pilgrim Hospital base. Building work is due to start once we've finalised planning permission and have our final business case approved. And we're hoping to be opening the ward in June 2025. But both of those investments represent the biggest investments in mental health in Lincolnshire, I would say ever. Certainly since I've been around in Lincolnshire, but I would say ever, to be fair. So quite positive update. Happy to take any questions and look forward to walking you all around the sites when they're built and the wards are ready to be opened. Have I lost Kevin, or is it my connection?
No, you had lost me. It was my
there you go.
connection,
Sorry,
but I'm back. Sorry, Mark. Had you finished?
Yeah, sorry, Kevin, all finished. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you very much. Any questions or comments for Mark? I can confirm that the site at Lincoln, although I haven't seen it in the last few months, is just fantastic, and the facility that we're building there is as good as it could possibly be, and absolutely do encourage people to, as soon as they get the chance, to visit that. But it's also really encouraging that it looks like we're going to be able to go ahead and invest in the site on Boston, and as somebody that lives locally to that's a really exciting development, and really good to see the Trust investing outside of Lincoln, if I can be so bold. Tim.
Thanks, Kevin. So Tim Harry, non-exec director. I think Mark was being slightly modest, because I think I would commend Mark and his team for the perseverance and doggedness that they've applied to the Boston site, because it has been an extremely difficult sort of construction environment, and I have to admire how they've kept going and got a result at the end of the day.
Yeah, I'd absolutely echo that, Tim. I mean, we haven't got the provisional go. Is provisional go ahead probably the right term to use, Mark? We haven't got that. It hasn't fallen out of the sky. It has been the result of some really determined and dogged work by Mark and his team. So, for the record, thank you very much, Mark. Are there any further questions for Mark? If not, then we will move on, if we may, to the governor election results. Shanna.
Thank you, Kevin. This document is of a similar vein to what was discussed in the APM, so providing information about our results this year. So this year's elections focused on service users and carers in particular. We unfortunately had 2 vacancies within the service user constituency, and since then we have had one of our service user governors resign from post. So at the moment, in terms of numbers within that division, we're looking into a potential by-election in which we'll be able to provide more information once we have information from our election provider. So we also had 2 staff governors who were elected as part of the by-election. So one being older adult, which is Valerie Shaw, and Aidan Hart within adult inpatient 2. Within this group that were recently elected as well, we have a mixture of newly elected governors and re-elected. So it's looking really positive, and I think based on the feedback we've had from the development day too, it's working well. Happy to answer any questions if anyone has any.
Thank you, Shanna. That's great. Any questions or comments? I don't see any, so we'll note that. Thank you very much. Karen, let's move on to item 4.2 in your cunningly numbered paper 5.4, which is an initiative test for all of us there, and the review of committee membership. Karen.
Kevin, I'm Karen Scott, Head of Corporate Governance. I don't intend to go into the paper in any specific detail, just to draw Governor's attention to the overview of the various membership committees and areas they can get involved in as governors as part of the trust governance structure. I think of most importance is on page 3 and the specific ask of governors. I'm not going to ask for people to put themselves forward in this meeting today because I don't want to risk missing anybody putting their hands up or missing anything in the chat. So rather than that, I intend tomorrow to circulate the table with the vacancies and of the 2 committees on to all governors in case we haven't got every governor here today. So the ask is that when I do send that email out, it will be for those governors who are already members of the 2 membership committees to actually confirm whether they'd like to remain members of those committees or not. They may wish to stand down and have a break from those. And we're always appreciative of governors' interest and commitment to those because it does involve a little bit of extra time. In terms of governors who are not currently members of either of those committees and who would like to put their names forward for the identified vacancies, they should please do so. And equally, if they're interested in either of those committees, but there aren't vacancies for their particular constituency, they should also let me know. And then we can look at the potential of either having deputies for people so that if somebody's not able to attend one meeting, somebody can step in for them, or even going back to committee members and asking if they're prepared to step down and let somebody else have an opportunity to find out what that committee does and be involved in its business. So hopefully that's straightforward. They are really important. It's really important that we actually do fill the seats on both of those committees because in order to be able to conduct the business when we hold meetings, in the best situation, we have quorate meetings. And it has been difficult in the recent past to actually ensure that we have got everybody there that we need to in the case of decisions being made. So please do respond to my email by the 25th of November in an ideal world. And then we'll confirm, assuming that we get enough interest, we'll be able to hopefully fill those vacancies that are identified. And if we've got any additional interest, we'll deal with that appropriately. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Karen. Any questions for Karen? Well, I don't see any. Thank you very much. You got in just under the wire, Bex. Well done.
Practice makes perfect. It was just a comment, really. If anybody is thinking of coming onto the Standards Committee, I've been on the Standards Committee for a little while. I would say the committees are not onerous tasks, and you know, I think we've probably met twice in the last 2 years on the Standards Committee. So, you know, putting people's name, putting yourself forward, give it a whirl, basically.
Well put, Bex. Thank you. On that note, then, we'll move on to the review of the forward agenda, Karen, which is you.
Kevin, so this is the Council's proposed forward agenda for 2023. It continues to list all of the items that ensure that the Council continues to meet its statutory duties in representing members of the Trust and the wider public, and in holding the Board of Directors to account via the non-executive directors. So it's there in front of you. It is regularly and can be regularly reviewed and amended. It's not cast in stone, and if anybody throughout the year has any concerns about it, or there's anything that crops up that we want to add to it and it's deemed appropriate, we can. So it's a fluid document, but I'm just seeking the Governor's approval in principle that this is the agenda that we'll work to in 2023.
Thanks. Karen Dye.
I just put it in the chat, but just to link back to the conversation that we were having earlier with Councillor Kendrick. So in May, the annual quality report is there. So just to get that on people's radar in terms of that will be coming back as distinct from the Quality Committee annual report, which is what we've had today.
That's really helpful, Di. Thank you for making that link. Any other questions or comments on the forward programme? If not, at this stage, I'm going to ask my non-exec colleagues on the board to disappear, if you wouldn't mind. Puffs of smoke are optional. I think they've all gone. I mean, I do that. I ask non-execs to leave because this paper is about their performance, and it gives you the opportunity as governors, should you want to ask any questions about the content of the paper and spare my non-exec colleagues blushes in the process, or for you to ask hard questions if that's what you want to do. So I'm presenting the paper. I'll take it as read. It describes my judgment on the performance of non-executive directors, and I'm very receptive to questions or comments from governors if they wish to ask any. I don't see any. Thank you very much indeed. I don't have any other business. I haven't been notified of any other business. Karen, have you?
No, I haven't received any, Kevin.
Okay. In that case, then, I think we've concluded our business for this afternoon. Thank you very much, everybody, for your attention and your time. Bex, you've done it again and got in just under the wire. I'm just about to say goodbye, but go on.
I was just looking at my agenda and I've got a 5.1 on my papers.
Yes, which is incorrectly numbered. That's the paper that went with the governor election results, which was 4.1.
Right.
So apologies. I think that paper was misnumbered. It was numbered 5.1 in my pack as well. Sorry.
No worries.
So I think we're done. Thank you very much, everybody. Thanks for your time and your attention. And see you next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye. Bye.
Bye.